Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host Thomas Tyree from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this is going to be episode 98 for you guys. It'll be a solo episode, just your host only this week. Of course, this episode is going to be coming on all four of our platforms: our Instagram account, our Facebook account, our YouTube account, and our Apple Podcast account. So let's go ahead and dive into the first segment of episode 98, and I'll be sharing my thoughts on the NBA Play-In Tournament. Obviously, you guys know we are in the beginning stages of the first round of the NBA playoffs for this NBA season, and the NBA Play-In Tournament ended Friday night, and I'll be sharing my thoughts on each NBA Play-In Tournament game. With that being said, the NBA Play-In Tournament was was a great addition to the NBA in 2020. During the pandemic year, during the COVID year, it was introduced in the NBA bubble era, and it has not disappointed since. It's giving more teams an opportunity, a last chance situation. You could also say for some ninth and 10th seeds in the conferences to potentially lock up a 7th or 8th seed in the playoffs in their respective conferences. So over the years, we've seen some competitive games in the NBA Play-In Tournament, and this year's NBA Play-In Tournament did not disappoint. Starting off with the first game of the NBA Play-In Tournament we saw last Tuesday took place between the Atlanta Hawks and the Miami Heat. The Atlanta Hawks knocked off the Miami Heat and won that game 116-105 to lock up the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. You guys know I'm a Miami Heat fan. I was a little disappointed, a little disgusted of how they came out flat in that game against the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks were just a better team that night. Head coach for the Atlanta Hawks, Quinn Snyder, had a pretty good game plan for the Atlanta Hawks on the road in a hostile environment, a hard place to win in the regular season, and definitely a hard place to win in a win in advance situation. So I thought that the Atlanta Hawks were the more physical team. I thought they were the better defensive team, and they out-rebounded the Miami Heat all game long. And of course, they were led by Trae Young's 25-point performance that helped them the Trae Young helped them lock up the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. Despite the trade rumors that Trae Young was hearing throughout the day, the trade rumors that were going around on social media, Trae Young put his head down, dropped 25 in South Beach, and helped the Atlanta Hawks advance in the NBA Play-In Tournament and lock up the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. Next game, we saw the Los Angeles Lakers take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. In my opinion, this was the best game of the NBA Play-In Tournament. From start all the way to finish, I was on the edge of my seat watching this game. And the Los Angeles Lakers were victorious, won this game 108-102 in overtime to lock up the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. It wasn't a pretty win for the Los Angeles Lakers, but they handled business against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they won. Even though Rudy Gobert was not available due to his one-game suspension, they still got the win in a win in advanced situation. That's all that matters. And the Los Angeles Lakers, I do believe, got a good draw in the first round. You guys know I said last week on last week's podcast that I predicted that the Los Angeles Lakers would match up against the Memphis Grizzlies. Right now, they're up 1-0 in the series. It's a long way to go, but I told you guys they were the hottest team heading into the playoffs, hottest team in the Western Conference with a lot of momentum. I still have them knocking off the Memphis Grizzlies by Game 7 in this 7-game series. It might only go to 6, and they could get the job done in LA. But I like the Lakers right now. They advanced on to get the 7th seed. And then in Wednesday's games, we saw the Chicago Bulls take on the Toronto Raptors. The Chicago Bulls beat the Toronto Raptors 109-105 to advance in the Play-In Tournament. The Bulls were led by Zach LaVine's 38-point performance. They were also led by DeMar DeRozan's 23-point performance in his revenge game back at his old stomping grounds in Toronto in the 6th. And they were also led by their unsung hero, Dia DeRozan, who is DeMar DeRozan's daughter, who is making an impact on the Chicago Bulls sideline. With that being said, all these ingredients, all these attributes, all these things were the reasons why the Chicago Bulls advanced in the Play-In Tournament. And to be honest, the Raptors had this game in the bag. They just choked this game away in the second half of that game. And missing 18 free throws at home in a win or go home situation is terrible. That is not a winning recipe for basketball. And With that being said, I have lost all respect for Toronto Raptors fans and their fan base out there in Toronto. Their fan base has been nauseating. It's been sickening over the years of what I watched from at home on television. We saw years ago in the NBA Finals, in the 2019 NBA Finals, when the Golden State Warriors took on the Toronto Raptors, the crowd cheered when Kevin Durant tore his Achilles. One of the greatest scorers of NBA history and one of the greatest basketball players that this league has to offer. And an NBA Finals game, the Toronto Raptors fan base cheered Kevin Durant, who just suffered a significant injury. Then fast forward to what I saw last Wednesday. They were sending death threats to DeMar DeRozan. They were threatening her in the arena. She had to be escorted. She was just a young female who got to experience her father in a win or go home situation, cheering her father's and the Chicago Bulls team on. That little girl did not deserve that disrespect to be escorted out of that arena. So with that being said, I've lost all respect for the Toronto Raptors fan base. But the Chicago Bulls would move on and advance in the NBA play-in tournament. Then we saw the Oklahoma City Thunder take on the New Orleans Pelicans. Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Pelicans 123 to 118, led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's 32-point performance. He is my vote to win Most Improved Player this NBA season. But what I found interesting after the game was C.J. McCollum's comments. After the game, which were true about the Pelicans. If you guys remember months and months back, I said the Pelicans would be a sleeper team with a trio of Zion Williamson, C.J. McCollum, and Brandon Ingram, if all healthy, would be a threat in the Western Conference. Well, unfortunately, that did not happen due to Zion being injured. And C.J. McCollum said a lot of interesting comments. We have to make sure guys are available, getting the right rest, the right nutrition to be available in games that matter most, like this. And the one player, the superstar that the Pelicans have locked up on a long-term deal is Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson was not available for the Pelicans in a winner-go-home situation again for the second year in a row. If you guys remember last year when the Pelicans played the number one seed Phoenix Suns, they took them all the way to Game 6 without Zion Williamson. Arguably, if Zion was available, they might have sent the Phoenix Suns home early last year in the first round. But Zion's health has been a question mark since he's came into the league, and he was not available last week in a winner go home situation. So I do believe that Zion is holding the potential back on this young New Orleans Pelicans team. They have a lot of good young talented players. I do believe that Zion not being able to be on the court is holding this New Orleans Pelicans team back. And in the final Eastern Conference game in the play-in tournament, we saw the Miami Heat take on the Chicago Bulls. The Miami Heat beat the Chicago Bulls 102 to 91, led by Jimmy Playoff Butler's 31-point performance, and Max Strus, who had a 31-point performance as well. The Miami Heat are a dangerous team to play in the NBA playoffs. Right now, they're up 1-0 against the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round. Both teams are going through some injuries. Giannis is down. His status for Game 2 is questionable due to his tailbone injury. And then we saw Tyler Hero broke his hand. He broke his hand in the first half against the Milwaukee Bucks yesterday and is going to be out for the sake of the future. So that's a big blow for the Miami Heat. However, I do believe they can still give the Milwaukee Bucks a run for their money, but I do believe the Milwaukee Bucks will win this series by Game 6. But back to the Chicago Bulls. Patrick Beverley will not be crowned an NBA play-in tournament champion this season. We know how much pride he took into winning the NBA play-in tournament last year when he showed his raw emotion, helping the Timberwolves knock out the Clippers in the play-in tournament last year. He acted like he won his first NBA championship. Those raw emotions will not be shown, and he will not be crowned an NBA play-in tournament champion this NBA season. With that being said, I think the Chicago Bulls might want to consider a rebuild. They can get a little draft picks for players like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic. I do believe that they need a change of scenery in Chicago. Things have not played out the way that they thought things would play out when they created this roster in the 2021 summer. I think it's time for a rebuild in Chicago. And then in the final Western Conference play-in tournament game, we saw the Minnesota Timberwolves take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Timberwolves beat Oklahoma City Thunder 120 to 95, led by Karl Anthony Towns, 28 points. We saw Rudy Gobert come back from his one-game suspension. It seemed like the team chemistry was back to where it was supposed to be, and it seemed like Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson buried the hatchet with their beef that went on in their final regular season game. But what stood out to me was Oklahoma City's Thunder's inexperience as a young team, not knowing what to do in these situations showed. They shot the ball 36% from the field. They went 13 for 40 shooting, 3-point wise from the 3-point arc, and they had a total of 18 turnovers. That's not winning basketball, winning recipe for winning basketball in a win or go home situation. But the Thunder have a bright future ahead. I do believe that they're going to be a young contending team for years to come in the Western Conference when it's all said and done. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they have Josh Giddey, and they get their second overall pick from this past NBA draft. Chet Holmgren back next year for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And they have a total of 15 first-round picks to look forward to. So the Thunder have a very bright future. But those are my thoughts on the NBA play-in tournament. This year's NBA play-in tournament did not disappoint this NBA season.